Welcome to a recap of today's CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we've been continuing to work on our group care application. Doesn't have a name yet, but the idea is to take some of our mockups and convert those into actual functioning code with the database backend. So essentially what we've done today, here's the working page that is populated by SQLite database at this point. We've got a groups listing, and I've created one group. And when you click the button, the group page is displayed, and there's no activities yet. I haven't gotten to that part of it, but we did get the group membership, and it's listing the members here. Just an unstyled. It's not even a list. It's just like going to have to be improved later. You can see the URL uses a UUID, so each group has a unique identifier that can't really be guessed. I think that's going to be important for privacy reasons, and I will have to add access control at a later point where only members of the group can access the page. Similarly, on the groups listing page, you should probably only see groups that you're already a member, which means I'll have to have a way of adding groups through this front end as well as the Django admin. So let's just quickly take a look at the Django admin. What we have here is a new model, care groups, and we'll take a look at the code in a moment. And each care group essentially has a title or a name and members, which are Django users. These are the default Django admin widgets for the particular types of fields: a text field, a character field, and a many-to-many field. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the code now. I didn't prepare the tabs, but what we've done today is added a few commits, and I'll just go through the files that we worked with during the live coding session. So we created a new app called Care Groups, and previously I've been working with these mockups and bringing the mockup code into this Care Groups app today. So I'll close these templates out. What we did first was registering the Care Groups app with our settings. That was about all we needed here. And defining some URLs in the Care Groups app and prefixing those with groups. And you can see I just imported those here. So that was all we needed in the core settings. Now if we take a look here at the Care Groups app itself, we've got the default app configuration. At first it was using a big auto field, which would give the model instances an integer, basically a big int for their ID, which is fairly easy to guess. Like if you have group number 400, then you can pretty much figure out there's 399 groups and start going through those. So I wanted to have a little bit better security through obscurity in this case. So what we did is created a care group model, and we specified an ID field with a UUID, universally unique identifier, and set it to be the primary key, UUID version 4, and the user can't edit it. We don't want them to be able to override it. Each group has a name, which is a character field. Up to 50 characters I think is reasonable. We could revisit that decision. It was kind of arbitrary, but we don't want the group names to be really long. It'll start to kind of clobber the user interface. We might need to use an ellipsis or whatever to kind of fit the constraints of the page. And a members field, which is a many-to-many field, linking the user model. I actually should use the configuration variable for that. I forget the shorthand, or there's a particular way of getting the settings user models, something like that. In any case, I just imported it directly here. And from any given user, we can get a list of their care groups, which actually might be a good way for me to generate the care group listing page now that I think of it. So that we don't have to, we just tailor it to the particular person's care groups rather than creating a generic list view and filtering it. I might approach it that way. Just added a verbose name and verbose name plural so that things look nicely in the user interface, and a default string representation to print the name, the group name, and an absolute URL, which returns the reverse for our care group detail URL, which we'll see in just a moment, and passes in the primary key, which is specified here. It's our ID field, but Django uses this alias here. Let's take a look at the URLs and then the view that was created. We have two URLs. When you go to /groups, it's going to render this base URL that's going to list the groups as a view, and I'm considering how I might actually revise this, but essentially it's a generic list view that takes a model, and we'll look at it in a moment, and returns a list of those model entities. We'll give it a name, care group list. Similarly, with the /group /primary key, you'll get a detail view for that particular group. These views are just using the generic class-based views from Django. We've got the care group detail, which inherits from detail view. Both of these take our care group model, and I pass in a friendly context object name, so our templates are a little bit more readable, meaningful. So when we're looking at a detail view for a particular group, we want the context object to be called group. And when we're looking at a list group, a view of groups, we can have a plural groups there. I might revisit this code again to just do a generic template view and override the context, or I could override the get context here. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it a little bit more. We then took some code from the generic template, these mockups, and essentially brought it over into the list view here. So we've got our list content block shows groups, and we have a row with one column, and there's a margin bottom, which I don't think is necessary here. And for each of the groups, we're going to render it in a card. I don't have group avatars yet or any image handling, so we'll have to come to that later. So for now, I just use a static image from Unsplash, as I did in a mockup. But in the card body, we do have the group string representation, which is the name field, and a link to view the group, which takes creates a URL to the group detail and passes in the group ID. So if you recall, from this group sheet, we have the group detail there. And when I click the group view button, it takes us to the group detail page, which is basically the same pattern. We've got overriding the content block. We use the group name and a title. The default string representation is the name. We create a row with two columns. Our group activities are the primary reason that people are forming these groups, is to coordinate activities. We just don't have any kind of functionality for that yet, but I figured I would put it in the user interface. And if there are members of the group, which there should be by default when you create a group, you would be the automatically added to it. But I don't have a form here. I'm going to have to add the functionality to create a group as a form. The Django admin allows us to create groups, but I don't want to add the administrative user to each of the groups. It does make sense here from the front end. So when I come around to the add group feature, then we'll automatically make sure that the user who is creating the group is added there. But in any case, so I had to do a little safety check there, I suppose, and render members section. It's 4 columns wide, and listing each of those, the string representation of a user is the username. That's about it. That was the progress we made today. But we're getting these, again, these mockups, and we're populating with actual data. So I think it's an important step, taking the app development one step at a time. Our app is open source on GitHub. It doesn't have a name yet. It's definitely a prototype. And I'm not sure exactly how the features will develop over time. But one of the long-term ideas is that we'll have a Django backend and a web client, as well as potentially a mobile client on iOS and Android using Flutter. But all of that is up in the air, and so the first thing I need to do is just get the general features in place for the prototype and get early feedback for the idea. Okay, well, thanks again for watching. This has been a CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. If you'd like to get involved with this or similar projects, stop by CodeBuddies.org. Have a great day, and I hope you stay well.